Home Alone horror stories. Story 1 by Emma. I never liked being home alone, but I told myself I was being childish. I was 19, not 9. Staying alone for the weekend while my parents visited my aunt in another state wasn't a big deal. The first night was fine, quiet, even peaceful. I watched TV in the living room, ordered takeout, and stayed up too late scrolling through my phone. Every once in a while, I'd hear the house creak, but I told myself it was normal. Old houses make noises. At 11:43 p.m., I got a text. Unknown number. You should lock your back door. I frowned. My first thought was that it was a prank, maybe one of my friends messing with me. I typed back quickly. Very funny. Who is this? No response. I felt a weird unease settle in my stomach. I was pretty sure the back door was already locked, but just to be safe, I got up and walked toward the kitchen. As I reached the hallway, a gust of cold air brushed past me. My heart stopped. The back door was open. Not wide open, just slightly, a few inches. Like someone had tested it, just enough to see if it was unlocked. My hand shook as I slammed it shut and locked it. I triple-checked the deadbolt, pressing my forehead against the cold wooden door, trying to calm my breathing. Someone was messing with me. Had to be. I grabbed my phone and typed again. Seriously. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. Then they stopped. Nothing. I checked the locks again, front door, windows, everything. The house was secure. But now I was on edge, my heart refusing to slow down. I turned on every light, making the house too bright for anything to lurk in the shadows. It was fine. I was fine. At 12:07 a.m., I got another text. Unknown number. Too late. A cold chill went down my spine. I didn't respond this time. I just stared at the screen, my fingers feeling numb. This was a joke. It had to be. I forced myself to laugh, trying to shake off the growing dread. I even typed back. Nice try, but I locked everything. Better luck next time. No response. I sat on the couch, arms wrapped around myself, eyes flicking to the windows every few seconds. I wanted to call someone, my parents, a friend, even the police, but what would I say? Someone sent me a creepy text? I turned my phone to silent, refusing to let this stupid game scare me. But it wasn't a game. At 12:42 a.m., I noticed movement outside. A shadow. I told myself I was imagining it. But then I saw it again. A figure, standing near the edge of the yard. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I opened the camera and zoomed in. The image was grainy, the dim glow from the streetlight barely illuminating the figure. But I could see enough. A man, standing still, facing my house. And in his hand, a key. My breath caught in my throat. I almost dropped my phone. No, that wasn't possible. My keys were inside. My parents had theirs. No one else had a copy. Then I remembered. A few weeks ago, we had a spare key missing. My mom noticed it first, but we assumed she had misplaced it. It never turned up. I thought about the back door being open. Had he used the key? Had he already been inside before I locked it? I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The man didn't move either. He just stood there, holding the key, watching. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he tilted his head. Just slightly. And then he turned and walked away. Not in a hurry. Not like someone who had been caught. Like someone who wasn't done playing. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the man walked away, my body refused to relax. Every sound, the wind, the ticking clock, the house settling felt like footsteps. Every shadow stretched too long, like something was still there, just beyond my sight. I sat curled up on the couch, my phone gripped tightly in my hand, staring at the front door. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? A man was watching me, but now he's gone? I checked the locks again. Front door unlocked. Back door unlocked. Windows locked. Everything was secure, but it didn't feel secure. At some point, exhaustion won. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, my phone buzzed loudly against the coffee table. My eyes snapped open. The sun was rising. For a brief second, I felt relief. Morning meant safety. Morning meant he was gone. Then I saw the notification. A new message. From the same unknown number. See you soon. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. My hand shook as I tried to unlock my phone. No way. No way. I pulled up the text thread. The messages from last night were gone. No, you should lock your back door. No, too late. Nothing. Just that last message. See you soon. I covered my mouth, trying not to make a sound. He deleted the messages. I didn't even know that was possible. My stomach churned. I felt watched, exposed, like I had been letting someone into my home without realizing it. The spare key, the unlocked door, my phone. I scrambled up from the couch and ran to my room, grabbing my laptop. I needed to know where those texts came from. I searched for apps that could fake numbers, delete messages remotely. There were a few, but something about this felt worse than just a prank. Then another thought hit me. I opened my phone settings, scrolled to my messages, and there it was. My text history showed no outgoing messages. I had responded to him last night. I had texted back, twice, but according to my phone, I had never sent anything. I dropped the phone onto my bed like it had burned me. My pulse was thudding in my ears. I tried to stay rational. Maybe my phone was glitching. Maybe some kind of scammer app had sent the texts and then erased them. But how would that explain the man in my yard? My hands clenched into fists. I was done feeling scared, done feeling powerless. I walked to the front door and checked the security chain. Then I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, just in case. I wasn't waiting around for him to come back. If he did, I'd be ready. I spent the rest of the morning in a haze, my body running on adrenaline and exhaustion. Every creak in the house made my skin crawl. Every vibration from my phone made my stomach twist. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just some elaborate prank. Maybe it was a scam. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I knew because of the key. He had my house key. I didn't know how he got it. I didn't know how long he had been watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to test the door. But I knew one thing, he wasn't finished. At 10:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My heart pounded as I picked it up, my fingers gripping the edges like it might shock me. The notification wasn't a text. It was from my security app. Motion detected. Front door. A chill ran down my spine. I opened the app with shaky fingers and pulled up the live camera feed. A delivery guy stood at my front door, holding a package. I let out a long, shaky breath. I was paranoid. That was all. Just paranoid. But then I noticed something that made my breath catch in my throat. The package was addressed to him. Not me. Not my parents. Him. The name was printed clearly on the shipping label, right above my address. I zoomed in, my pulse hammering. I didn't recognize the name. I had lived in this house my whole life. We never had renters. Never had anyone by that name living here. So why was a package for him being delivered to my home? My body felt frozen. Did I open the door? Did I refuse the package? Did I pretend I wasn't home? The delivery guy knocked again. I took a deep breath and did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? I forced my voice to stay steady. There's a package being delivered to my house, but it's not for me. I think it's connected to someone who's been stalking me. The dispatcher asked me to stay on the line. I stepped back from the door, watching the screen. The delivery guy shifted uncomfortably, then set the package down on the porch and walked away. I exhaled. He wasn't part of it. He was just doing his job. But that left the question, what was in the package? The police arrived 20 minutes later. I didn't open the door until I saw their uniforms on the camera. A female officer, Officer Jensen, stepped onto the porch, eyeing the package before looking at me. You said you didn't order this? I shook my head. She squatted down and examined the label. Then she frowned. This name looks familiar. My stomach dropped. Familiar how? I asked. She stood up, pulling out a radio. Dispatch, can you run a name for me? I held my breath as she recited it. The response came too fast. 10-4, that's a known alias. Possible connection to multiple home invasions. Last confirmed location was 2 towns over. No known address. My body went cold. Officer Jensen turned back to me. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. I didn't argue. I barely even breathed as I threw whatever I could grab into a backpack. My laptop, some clothes, my charger. The whole time, my mind raced. How long had he been planning this? Was he watching me right now? As I zipped up my bag, I glanced at the security camera feed one last time. And that's when I saw it. The package was gone, taken while the cops were standing right there. And the only thing left on my porch was my house key. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. The package was gone. The cops had been there, right there. And yet, somehow, in the few minutes I had spent packing, someone had taken it back. The only thing left was my house key, sitting perfectly centered on the porch. Like a message. Like a challenge. I grabbed my backpack and sprinted out of my bedroom, nearly colliding with Officer Jensen in the hallway. What's wrong? She asked, eyes narrowing. I held up my phone, my fingers trembling. The package, it's gone. Her head snapped toward the front door. What? She rushed outside, hand instinctively resting on her holstered weapon. I followed close behind, my chest tight with panic. The other officer, a guy named Reynolds, was still standing by the patrol car. His face twisted in confusion as Jensen pointed at the porch. Did you see anyone take it? She demanded. Reynolds frowned. No, no one's been near the house. I've been out here the whole time. I could barely process what he was saying. But it's gone, I whispered. Jensen slowly stepped onto the porch, bending down to pick up the house key. She turned it over in her palm, then looked at me. Are you sure this was missing before? Yes, I said immediately. And you're sure you don't know who this guy is? I swallowed hard. I've never seen him before in my life. That was the terrifying part. I had no idea who he was. No idea why he was targeting me. No idea how long he had been watching. Jensen exchanged a glance with Reynolds. "She's not staying here," she said, her voice firm. Reynolds nodded. "Agreed." They escorted me to their patrol car. I didn't argue. The whole time, my eyes darted around the street, the neighboring houses, the trees. He was still out there, watching, waiting. We spent the next few hours at the station. Jensen took my statement. They ran the name on the package again. No real identity, just an alias connected to break-ins and stalking cases. No arrests. No known address. "What does he do?" I asked. Jensen sighed, rubbing her temples. "He gets inside homes before people realize he's there. Watches them. Stays hidden for days or even weeks. And then, one night." She trailed off, her eyes flicking to mine. I felt sick. "You think he was already in my house?" My voice barely came out. She didn't answer right away. "Then, I think he wanted you to wonder if he was." I shivered. They let me stay in the station break room until my parents arrived. My mom practically crushed me in a hug, her voice frantic, asking 1,000 questions at once. My dad spoke to the officers, his face pale and tense. They didn't let me go back home that night. The locks were changed again. Security cameras added. Motion sensors installed. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't enough. For weeks, I barely slept. Every noise sent a jolt of fear down my spine. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another text from that number. But nothing ever came. He was gone. At least, that's what I told myself. Then, 1 month later, my mom found something under the back porch. A folded-up piece of paper, weighed down by a rock. It only had 4 words. "I still have a key." Story 2. By Leo. I moved into my apartment 3 weeks ago. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small 1-bedroom in an older building on the outskirts of town. The kind of place with creaky wooden floors, outdated appliances, and a strange smell in the hallways that no one could quite place. But I didn't care. It was mine. My first place on my own, away from roommates, away from my parents. Just me. The first week was uneventful. I spent my time unpacking, arranging furniture, and getting used to the unfamiliar sounds of the building. Pipes groaning in the walls, distant footsteps in the hallway, the occasional murmur of a neighbor's TV through thin walls. By the second week, I had settled into a routine. Work, home, dinner, bed. It wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful. Normal. Until I started hearing the creaking. It started around 1 a.m. one night while I was lying in bed. A slow, deliberate sound, like someone walking across the floor. At first, I thought it was just my upstairs neighbor. But then I realized the sound was coming from inside my apartment. I sat up, my pulse quickening. Listened. The noise stopped. I held my breath, heart hammering in my chest. After a few moments of silence, I convinced myself it had been nothing. The building was old. Old buildings settle. I forced myself to go back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. A soft, creaking noise somewhere near my closet. I turned on my bedside lamp, scanning the room. Nothing. I got up, walked over, and pulled the closet door open. Empty. Just my clothes, a few boxes, my spare set of sheets. I let out a breath, feeling ridiculous for being so paranoid. Maybe I was just imagining things. But the next morning, I noticed something strange. One of the boxes in my closet had moved. I was sure I had stacked it neatly against the back wall when I moved in. But now, it was slightly off-center, pushed forward. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I had knocked it over. Maybe I had just remembered wrong. But the feeling of unease lingered. That night, I couldn't shake the sensation that something was off. The air in my apartment felt heavy, like I wasn't alone. I double-checked my locks. I looked inside the closet again, staring at the boxes. And that's when I noticed the wall. It was slightly different from the rest of the closet. The paint didn't quite match. The texture was rougher, uneven. I frowned, running my fingers along the surface. It felt hollow. I knocked lightly. A dull, empty sound echoed back at me. I hesitated, my breath catching in my throat. What the hell? Something about it made my skin crawl. I grabbed my box cutter from the kitchen and returned to the closet, kneeling in front of the strange wall. Slowly, carefully, I pressed the blade against the seam and cut. The drywall peeled away too easily, like it had been covered up quickly. A small gap appeared, revealing a dark space beyond. My stomach twisted. I hesitated, gripping the edge of the drywall, and pulled. A hidden door swung open. Behind it was a small, windowless room. And inside that room, someone had been living there. My breath caught in my throat. There was a thin mattress on the floor, covered in a crumpled, stained blanket. A pile of empty water bottles sat in the corner. Crumpled snack wrappers. A single, tattered backpack leaning against the wall. And the worst part? A camera. A small, battery-powered camera mounted on a tripod, facing directly toward the slits in the closet wall. Facing my bedroom. I felt like I was going to throw up. I staggered backward, my pulse pounding so hard I could barely hear my own breath. My apartment had a hidden room. Someone had been inside it, watching me. I wanted to run, wanted to leave right then and there. But something in me, morbid curiosity, maybe fear, made me step forward instead. I knelt beside the mattress, my hands trembling as I reached for the backpack. Inside, I found clothes, a toothbrush, a few crumpled bills, and a notebook. The pages were filled with handwritten notes. Some were random observations. She leaves for work at 8:15. She takes long showers. She sleeps on her right side. My vision blurred as I flipped further. And then, near the end, I found a note that made my blood run cold. She hasn't found the door yet, but she will soon. I dropped the notebook, my fingers numb. Whoever had written this, they knew I was close to discovering the room. They had been watching me figure it out. And then a noise. A soft creak from somewhere behind me. I froze. A second later, the closet door slammed shut. I lunged forward, yanking at the handle, locked. Panic surged through me. I turned, pressing my back against the hidden wall, staring into the dark space. The air was thick, damp. I could hear my own heartbeat, erratic and pounding. I had to get out. I slammed my shoulder against the closet door. Once, twice. The hinges groaned but held. Then a whisper, low, barely audible, right outside the closet. I was wondering when you'd find it. I screamed and threw myself at the door with all my strength. Though it splintered, the hinges snapped, and I tumbled out onto the floor. I scrambled to my feet, gasping for air. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the hallway. And in the doorway, a silhouette stood watching me. Tall, motionless, holding something in their hand. My stomach dropped. I didn't think, didn't wait. I bolted for the front door, not even looking back as I threw it open and ran into the hallway, my bare feet slamming against the cold tile. I sprinted to my neighbor's door, pounding on it, sobbing, screaming for help. Behind me, my apartment door slowly creaked open. Then footsteps. The door across the hall opened, and my neighbor, a middle-aged woman in a bathrobe, stared at me, wide-eyed. Call the police. I gasped. There's someone in my apartment. She didn't hesitate. She yanked me inside, locking the door behind us, and grabbed her phone. The police arrived within minutes, but by the time they entered my apartment, the hidden room was empty. The mattress, the water bottles, the camera, the backpack, all gone. No signs that anyone had ever been there, except for one thing. A single, folded piece of paper left in the middle of my bedroom floor. I picked it up, my hand shaking. It had just 4 words. You were never alone. I sat on my neighbor's couch, wrapped in a blanket, gripping a cup of tea that I couldn't bring myself to drink. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The police moved in and out of my apartment, talking in hushed voices, taking photos of the hidden room that shouldn't have existed. Every time I glanced toward my front door, my stomach twisted, because I knew whoever had been in there was gone. And that was worse than if they had stayed. One of the officers, Detective Ellis, knelt beside me, speaking in a calm, careful tone. You're sure you didn't see his face? I shook my head. And you've never noticed anything suspicious before tonight? No. I heard noises, but I thought it was just the building settling. I never thought. My voice broke. I swallowed hard. Detective Ellis nodded, scribbling something in his notebook. Whoever was in there had a plan. They didn't just pick this apartment at random. They've been watching you for a while. My skin crawled. Do you know how long? I whispered. He exhaled. Hard to say, but we'll find out. But they didn't. Over the next few days, the police searched every inch of my apartment. The hidden room was confirmed to be a converted storage space from when the building was first constructed. No records of it being used for anything else. There were no fingerprints, no DNA. The security cameras in the hallway? Nothing. It was as if whoever had been inside vanished the second I found the door. And then, the text started. The first one came 2 nights later, when I was staying at a hotel. Unknown number. I liked it better before you knew. I stared at my phone, my chest tight with panic. The second one came at 3:15 a.m. Unknown number. Don't bother changing the locks. I was never using the door anyway. I called the police immediately. They tracked the number. It was a burner phone. Untraceable. Detective Ellis looked at me with a grim expression. You need to leave this apartment. Tonight. I didn't argue. I packed what little I could, left everything else behind. And as I was walking out of the building, I glanced up at my bedroom window. For a brief second, just a flash, I swore I saw movement. Like someone watching me leave. And then, they smiled. I don't live alone anymore. I don't stay in places without checking every wall, every closet, every possible hidden space. And every night before I sleep, I check my phone. Because I know one day, I'll get another text. And this time, I might not wake up in time to stop him. Story 3. By Jake. I was home alone when the knock came. It wasn't late, just past 6 p.m., but the house was already dark. Winter evenings were like that. The kind that made everything outside look deeper, like the sky swallowed up the world a little faster than it should. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hesitated before getting up from the couch, my fingers tightening around my phone. The TV hummed softly in the background, the only sound in the otherwise quiet house. Another knock. Not rushed. Calm. Measured. I walked to the front door, checking the peephole out of habit. A man stood on the porch, wearing a delivery uniform, one of those generic navy blue shirts with a logo I didn't recognize. He held a medium-sized package in his hands. I felt a slight wave of relief. Just a delivery guy. I opened the door, but only a few inches. Enough to talk, not enough for him to see much inside. "Delivery for Sam," he said, holding up the box. It took me a second to process. "There's no Sam here," I said. The man frowned, then glanced down at the package like he was double-checking. "Oh, shoot. Must be the wrong house." His voice was flat, too neutral. Something about it made my stomach tighten. "No problem," I said quickly. "Have a good night." I shut the door before he could respond. I locked it. Something felt off. I checked through the peephole again. The man hadn't moved. He just stood there, staring at the package in his hands. Not walking back to his van, not checking his GPS. Just standing there. My pulse picked up. I moved away from the door, back toward the living room, keeping my phone tight in my grip. I didn't like this. Maybe it was nothing, but something in my gut told me it wasn't. A full minute passed before I heard him walk away. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps on the porch. Then down the front steps. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. The man walked to his van, but he didn't get in. Instead, he opened the back doors. The inside was dark. Empty. No packages. No shelves stacked with deliveries. Just a van with nothing inside. My stomach turned. Delivery vans didn't look like that. There were always packages, clipboards, some sign of a route. This one looked like a trap waiting to be sprung. He stood there for a second, then turned his head slightly. Not toward his van. Toward my house. I let the blinds drop. My heart pounded against my ribs. I moved away from the window and sat down on the couch, staring at my phone. I needed to call someone? The police? A neighbor? But what would I even say? A delivery guy knocked on the wrong door and left? That wasn't illegal. That wasn't even weird. Except it was. Something was wrong with the way he stood there. The way he waited. The way he seemed to already know I wasn't Sam. I clicked on my security app, pulling up the doorbell camera footage. It loaded slowly, my Wi-Fi dragging as the video appeared on screen. I tapped play. The footage showed the man walking up to my door, the package already in his hands. He knocked. Waited. Knocked again. Then something made my blood run cold. The timestamp showed he had been standing there for almost 5 minutes before knocking. Just standing. Waiting. I felt sick. I checked the camera feed again. The van was still there. Still parked outside. But the driver's seat was empty. I couldn't see him anymore. I stood up too fast, my breath catching. I glanced at the windows, every shadow outside feeling too deep, too dark. I moved toward the back of the house, checking the sliding glass door. Locked. The kitchen door? Locked. My fingers trembled as I checked the security feed one more time. My stomach dropped. The van was gone. Not just moved. Gone. No taillights down the street. No engine sound fading into the distance. Just gone. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way my body refused to relax. Maybe I had missed it driving away. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then my phone buzzed. I jumped. My hands were clammy as I lifted it. A text from an unknown number. "Sorry about the mix-up. See you next time." I felt like my lungs stopped working. I stared at the screen, my vision tunneling. No one had my number. I hadn't given it to him. I hadn't said my name. I forced myself to breathe. Forced myself to stay calm. Maybe it was a scam. Maybe he had looked up my information somehow. Maybe. But I didn't believe that. I deleted the message, then did the only thing I could think of. I called the police. The officer on the line sounded bored. I told him about the van, about the fake delivery, about the lingering, waiting, watching. Did he try to break in? No. Did he threaten you? No. A pause. Then there's not much we can do. I hung up. I knew I wouldn't sleep that night. I sat awake, listening, waiting. But the van never came back. For a while, I convinced myself it was over. Then, 2 weeks later, my neighbor knocked on my door. She looked uneasy. "Hey," she said. "Weird question, but did you get a package for Sam?" I felt a slow, creeping dread settle over me. "Why?" Her eyes flicked to the side, toward the street. "Because there's a van parked outside again. And I swear, the guy inside has just been watching your house." I didn't move. My body locked up at my neighbor's words. The words I had hoped I'd never hear again. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice steady. "What kind of van?" I asked. She glanced over her shoulder toward the street. "White. No logos. Windows are tinted. I can't see inside." My stomach nodded. "Where is it parked?" She hesitated. "Same spot as before, I think." I swallowed hard, fighting the rising panic. 2 weeks. 2 whole weeks. Had he been coming back this whole time? Had I just not noticed? I stepped toward the window but stopped myself before touching the blinds. If he was watching, I didn't want him to know I was looking. Did you see him get out? I asked. She shook her head. No. But I swear, the second I walked outside, I felt like someone was staring at me. I knew exactly what she meant. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and pulled up my security app. The doorbell camera was already recording. I tapped on the live feed. The screen loaded slowly. Too slowly. Then, there it was. The van. Sitting perfectly still, engine off. It looked identical to the one from before. The same one. The timestamp read 3:27 p.m. He wasn't trying to hide anymore. I'm calling the cops, I whispered. My neighbor exhaled. Good. Because this is freaking me out. I dialed. The dispatcher's voice was calm, too calm. 911. What's your emergency? I explained everything. The fake delivery, the van, the texts, the feeling of being watched. The woman on the other end listened in silence. Then, we'll send someone over. How long will that take? A pause. Depends on availability. That was not what I wanted to hear. Do you have any weapons in the house? She asked. I hesitated. No. Lock your doors. Stay inside. I didn't need to be told twice. My neighbor lingered in the doorway, shifting uncomfortably. Do you want to wait at my place? She asked. I almost said yes. Almost. But something inside me refused to leave. No. But can you keep an eye out? She nodded, looking relieved to step away. I locked the door behind her. Then, slowly, I moved toward the front window. I lifted the blinds just a fraction, just enough to see. The van was still there. And this time, the driver's door was open. A man stood beside it, and he was facing my house. My breath hitched. He wasn't moving, wasn't fidgeting, just standing there, like he was waiting. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Then, as if he could sense me watching, he lifted his hand and held up a package. I took a step back. No way. The package wasn't sealed, and from where I stood, I could see something inside. A manila folder. Thick, stuffed with papers. What the hell was he trying to deliver? I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then, before I could react, he set the package down on the curb, turned, and got back into the van. The engine rumbled to life, and just like before, he drove away. I didn't move. The van disappeared down the street, its tail lights fading into the distance, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, that if I stepped outside, I'd be making a huge mistake. The package sat on the curb. I didn't want to touch it. Every instinct in me screamed that this was another trick, another way for him to get inside my head. But I had to know. I grabbed my phone and texted my neighbor. The van left. Can you still see the package? A few seconds later, she responded. Yeah, it's just sitting there. What do you want to do? I hesitated before typing back. Can you come with me? Less than a minute later, she was at my door. She still looked uneasy, but she gave me a reassuring nod. Let's get this over with. Together, we stepped outside. The street was quiet. Too quiet. The neighborhood felt wrong. The wind blew lightly, kicking up dry leaves across the pavement, and every sound made my heart jump. We reached the package. I bent down, hands shaking, and picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. The manila folder inside wasn't the only thing in there. Something solid was underneath it. I looked at my neighbor. She swallowed hard. You should open it inside. I nodded. I didn't want to be out here any longer than necessary. We rushed back inside, locking the door behind us. The package sat on my kitchen table, a silent, heavy presence. I stared at it, willing myself to open it. Then, finally, I did. Inside, the folder was thick, packed with documents, photographs, notes. The first photo made my stomach drop. It was me, taken from outside my house, in my living room, at night. I flipped through the pages with shaking fingers. More photos, some from inside my house. Me cooking, me watching TV, me sleeping. My breath came shallow and fast. This wasn't just stalking. He had been inside. I felt like I was going to be sick. Then my neighbor gasped. What the hell is that? I looked down at the package. Beneath the folder, wrapped carefully in brown paper, was the other item. I unwrapped it with trembling hands. My house key. And a note. Not Sam. But I got it anyway. I dropped the note like it burned me. My mind reeled. The missing key. The weird texts. The footsteps I swore I had imagined in the middle of the night. He had been in here. Before I even knew he existed. Before the fake delivery. Before the van. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called the police. This time, they took me seriously. Detective Ellis arrived within 20 minutes. I showed him everything. The package, the folder, the photos, the key. His jaw clenched as he flipped through the pages. This guy didn't just find you randomly. He's been planning this for a while. I swallowed the rising panic. Can you catch him? Ellis exhaled, setting the papers down. We'll do everything we can. But if I were you, I wouldn't stay here another night. I didn't argue. I packed a bag and left that night. I never went back. I don't know if they ever found him. I don't know if they ever even looked. But sometimes, when I walk down a street at night, I swear I hear slow, measured footsteps following behind me. And every once in a while, I still get texts from an unknown number. See you soon.